Welcome to the In-Between-Man podcast, where men can be men. It's true. I'm not lying to you. And I'm super excited that you're here. It's been an interesting day, gang. Lot of things learned today. I looked at the number of views and downloads I got from the last 7 episodes from the State of American Men 2025 survey, and there's been like 4. Which is fine. I mean, it is what it is. I'm not upset about putting the content out there, but it's also made me think a little bit more about how willing men are to even listen to content that talks about, being emotionally vulnerable, or even considering doing it. And so I have one more headline that I have to do for the State of American Men 2025 survey, but I just couldn't grind through it today. I had to find something else. I had to look for something else. And so this is, it might be a direction that we go in next, simply because no one's listening. We got to change things up if we want people to listen. All right. So during my day today, I was looking for information. I was looking for data that could help me understand if men have ever been a victim of physical violence, stalking, psychological aggression, things of that nature. And believe it or not, and this has been an interesting scenario as well, I've been using all of the AI tools out there. I started with Perplexity, I went over to Krok, and then I ended up with ChatGPT. And out of all 3 of those, I can tell you that ChatGPT for me is clearly the winner in providing data or information on questions that I propose to it, which is really freaking pretty cool. So I found, and this survey was released in 2015, so it's 10 years old. And when I started reading this data, I came across a term which is intimate partner violence. Like, what the hell is that? And so today, this isn't going to just be exclusively for the male audience out there. If women want to dive in and listen to this, please do, because I'm going to go over both. But I'm trying to find data that I can identify with, based on my experience going through my divorce, what I've learned about emotional abuse, psychological aggression, and things like that I never believed I could ever be a victim of. And so this survey is the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey. And it goes on something like this. Sexual violence, stalking, and intimate partner violence are serious public health problems affecting millions of people in the United States each year. These forms of violence are associated with chronic physical and psychological adverse health conditions, and violence experienced as a child or adolescent is a risk factor for repeat victimization as an adult. First launched in 2010 by the CDC, National Center for Injury Prevention and Control, the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey is an ongoing nationally represented survey that assesses sexual violence, stalking, and intimate partner violence victimization among adult women and men in the United States. This brief report represents and highlights the highlights from the 2015 data year data tables presented at the end. Okay, so this is going over, sexual violence. It's going over, rape. It's going over all those things. And I am going to stick to what this research study talks more about and gets in depth about, which is the intimate partner violence. Like, I had no idea what that was. I had no idea what that means. And so I was curious to find out more. And the more I read, the more I got interested in it. So let me read you the definition, okay? So what is intimate partner violence? There are 4 types of intimate partner violence included in this report. These include sexual violence, stalking, physical violence, and psychological aggression. An intimate partner is described as a romantic or sexual partner and includes spouses, boyfriends, girls, people with whom we have dated or seen or hooked up with. I mean, that's a broad audience, right? So I'm going to break down these 4 scenarios that are associated with intimate partner violence. The first one being sexual violence, which includes rape, being made to penetrate someone else, sexual coercion, and unwanted sexual contact. Contact sexual violence is a combined measure that includes rape, being made to penetrate someone else, sexual coercion, and or unwanted sex contact. Number 2, which is stalking. Victimization involves a pattern of harassing or threatening tactics used by a perpetrator that is both unwanted and causes fear or safety concerns in the victim. Then we have physical violence. Includes the range of behaviors from slapping, pushing, or shoving to severe acts that include hitting with a fist or something hard, kicked, hurt by pulling hair, slammed against something, tried to be hurt by choking or suffocating, beaten, burned on purpose, used a gun or a knife. That's a good definition of physical violence. And then here's psychological aggression, which is what I focused in on more, which includes expressive aggression, such as name-calling, insulting, or humiliating an intimate partner, and coercive control, which includes behaviors that are intended to monitor and control or threaten an intimate partner. Which is, wow, right? Like, I mean, I hear stories from my kids who, girlfriends that they're dating and 17 years older, screaming and hollering about not having their location services on their phone. So intimate partner violence related impacts includes experiencing any of the following: being fearful, concerned for your safety, injury, need for medical care, needed help from law enforcement, missed at least one day of work, missed at least one day of school. The following impacts were also included in the lifetime estimate only: any post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, need for housing services, need for victim advocacy services, need for legal services, and contacting a crisis hotline. For those who have experienced rape or made to penetrate by an intimate partner, it also includes a lifetime estimate of having contracted a sexually transmitted infection or having become pregnant, obviously females only. Intimate partner violence related impact questions were assessed among victims of contact, sexual violence, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner, which during the lifetime or in the last 12 months. The impacts were assessed for specific perpetrators and asked in relation to any form of intimate partner violence experienced in that relationship. By definition, all stalking victimizations result in impact because of the definition of stalking requires the experience of fear or concern for safety. Because violent acts often do not occur in isolation and are frequently experienced in the context of other violence committed by the same perpetrator, questions regarding the impact of the violence were asked in relation to all forms of intimate partner violence experience. experience sexual violence, physical violence, stalking, and psychological aggression by the perpetrator in the relationship. So that gives you a definition of a whole. It gives you hopefully a very good sense of what is being defined as sexual violence, what is being defined as stalking, what is being defined by physical violence, and what is being defined by psychological aggression. And the reason why I'm harping on psychological aggression is because I never believed that I could be a victim of emotional abuse or psychological aggression or, gaslighting or being, manipulated in ways where I've been trying to be convinced that what I'm thinking or believing isn't rational and is irrational, and man, I never believed that I could have any of that stuff. And because I've been sober for a long period of time, I prided myself on being able to see all the signs of somebody lying to me about, drinking or not drinking or, defects of character and things of that nature. I was convinced that I was an expert in this area. And for almost 20 years, I've been a victim of not everything, more of the psychological aggression than anything else. And, when I made the decision to divorce my wife, it was insane. So let's get into a little bit more of intimate partner violence. So about 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 women experience contact sexual violence, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner and reported an intimate partner violence related impact during their lifetime. So here are some interesting stats of intimate partner violence for women. In the US, remember, this is 10 years old, okay? So take it with all with a grain of thought. But I think most importantly, what I want to convey is I didn't know anything about this stuff before I got married because I never thought that it could happen to me and never believed that it would. And so these psychological aggressive behaviors and terms like gaslighting and all these things, I had no freaking clue. And so for men who may be in a dynamic that is exactly like this, they may not even have any idea of these types of dynamics and would probably even say to you, if they were happening, it's not a big deal, And that's the reality that I think men are in, is that we didn't know that this stuff could happen. We didn't believe it was happening. We didn't think it could happen to us. And more importantly, we just stuck it in there because we thought that that's what we needed to do as being a man. How many times have you heard happy wife, happy life? What about, there's no term about happy husband, happy life. There's a female component to relationships that require us to be more accepting about female dynamics that we might normally not be accepting of if it was just a dude. You know what I mean? So let's keep going. There are 5 bullet points that I'm going to share with you, and then we're going to move over to the man side. Okay? In the US, over 1 in 3, or 43.6 million women experience contact sexual violence, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner during their lifetime. 43.6 million women. 1 in 3. Damn. About 1 in 4, roughly 30 million, in the US experienced contact sexual violence, physical violence, and or stalked by an intimate partner during their lifetime and reported some form of intimate partner violence related impact. So it happened to women, and they reached out to law enforcement or other, hotlines, crisis areas to talk about what they needed to do in order to get away from the contact sexual violence and things of that nature. They've done that. They do that a lot better than men do. Regarding specific subtypes of intimate partner violence, about 18.3% of women experienced contact sexual violence, 30.6% experienced physical violence, 21.4% experienced severe physical violence, and 10.4% experienced stalking during their lifetime. This is 10 freaking years ago, right? Like, it's alarming when you take the time to think about it. And it was never in the forefront of my mind whenever I was thinking about anything female. You got to remember, I'm a white, blue-blooded American. And there's a lot of things that I haven't had to experience that other men from other cultures and ethnic backgrounds have to experience. So and thankfully, I've missed out on learning those experiences because they don't apply to me. Like it doesn't apply to me that when I get pulled over by the police officer, I don't know how a black man is going to feel when that happens, right? Like, that's just something I don't think about. I mean, I can only imagine what it feels like because I've talked to a lot of my black friends that have talked about it. And so it just gives me a different perspective. And this stuff was really never at the forefront of my mind. It never concerned me. And, I grew up in an era that was more, traditionally aligned. Like, we could slap chicks' asses and pull on their bra strings or, be a lot more aggressive from a flirtation standpoint than can be today. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but, women had to tolerate those advances, not because they wanted to, but because that was expected of them, whether they liked it or not. Capiche? An estimated 1 in 18, or 6.6 million women in the United States experienced contact sexual violence, psychological violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner during the 12 months preceding the survey. And then the last one, which is interesting, is over 1/3 of women, 43.5 million, experienced psychological aggression by an intimate partner during their lifetime. I mean, these are big freaking numbers. 4.3, 4.3.5. What's incredible, it's just overwhelming. It puts things into perspective on how my attitude towards women during that time was, not very constructive. Just considering women sex symbols, right, and not being cognizant that they're much more than that. All right, so now we just went over the 5 components associated with women dealing with an intimate partner violence. Now we're going to deal with men. And I think this will be shocking for a lot of men. It was shocking for me when I read it, and it was shocking for me to experience some of the things mentioned in these results in my own life. Again, because I never, ever considered that it could happen to me. Never believed that it could. Okay? So in the US, about 1 in 3, or 37.3 million men, experienced contact sexual violence. physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner during their lifetime. Obviously not as many as women, but that's still 37.3 million. Nearly 1 in 10 men, or 12.1 million in the US, experienced contact sexual violence, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner during their lifetime and reported some form of IPV-related impact. Now that would be in the realm of what I did. I had a scenario that I'm not going to get into a lot of detail because my kids can watch this, and I don't want to say anything negative about their mother because it's their mother, and I want to be cognizant of that. Although I'd like to, and I'd like to scream from the hilltops, the only people that would end up hurting are my kids, and what's the point? But I had a situation where I had an altercation with my wife, and there was some physical contact on her end, minimal, like nothing severe, very minimal, a scratch. Okay. And so I couldn't believe it. And so I went home. At the time I was living in a camper and cleaned myself up, and then realized that I should probably go to the police station. And so, I thought that it would be a good idea to document something. I don't know why, but I did. So I drove to the police station with my dog, and she was there. And she was there, by herself. And I called the police station and said, hey, my name is so-and-so and so-and-so. I see that my wife's car is here. We just got into a minor physical confrontation, and I don't want to come in there if it's going to create more problems. Can someone come out and talk to me? I'd like to report what happened, right? So they're like, absolutely. And dude, I will never fucking forget this, ever. So the police officer comes out, and this police officer happened to be one that had like a canine unit, you know what I mean? And my dog, Butch, has got the window down and he's barking. I mean, roar, 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 roar. And meanwhile, while this guy is walking to me, he is eyeballing me up and down, up and down. Clearly, he has heard a story from my ex-wife that is not painting a really good picture of me. And I could see his disdain and lack of empathy. This guy was just all business. And so I proceeded to tell him some of the things that had been happening up until that point. And then I said, do you see that I got scratched on the forehead? I mean, this is just what happened. And he's like, yeah, I do. Do you want to report that? And I was like, no, I don't. But I'm just bringing it to your attention to let you know that there's another side to the story that you're not hearing. Let me guess. She didn't tell you she scratched me. And he goes, I'll have to confirm that with her. He didn't say yes or no. And so he looked at me after 15, 20 minutes, and I mentioned that to him, and he was gone for a half an hour. And he came back outside with a clipboard. And the clipboard had a hotline number of physical violence. And I was like, what's going on? Like, what's happening here? And the police officer looked at me again with a little less aggressive tone and, sort of body language. And he said, The state of North Carolina is a zero tolerance state for domestic violence or domestic abuse. And the fact that your ex-wife just confirmed for me that she scratched you is a crime, and we're gonna take her to jail for 3 days. And I was like, "Are you serious?" And so I was like, "Holy shit!" And I kind of smiled a little bit because I was like, "Yeah, she deserved it." But I had no idea. I just thought it was funny because she went there, to document something for herself, and ended up going to, you get it. But in the meantime, I'm supposed to, while I'm in the car, make the phone number to the crisis hotline. Does she have a gun? Are you in fear of your life? Where does she live? Like a full-on hotline crisis center of what, could have happened. Now, granted, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the absolute worst, mine was like not even a 1. Like I got a small scratch, but because North Carolina is a zero tolerance state, even a scratch, that's zero tolerance, right? So I'm getting all the details about domestic violence survivors and people who are going through the process, like I had been punched in the face or like I had been raped, and it wasn't anything like that. But I was so overwhelmed by it all because I didn't anticipate any of that happening, and the fact that this guy was, and I get it, he probably has many of these calls on a daily basis, and many of the men are the ones that are the perpetrators, and it's the women who are experiencing this, violence. And so I proceeded to, make a few phone calls, and then I was free to go. The flip side of that coin is there is additional information that was provided to me about, like, there are actual houses where women can go if they feel like their life is being threatened. And there was one, as a matter of fact, one of my friends used to work for. And so I called and, basically asked, what kind of information could you provide, or could I talk to somebody that could kind of help me understand, what I'm going through? Because this is crazy. And so this woman was like, yeah, I'll send you some information. It's about, emotional abuse. And I was like, get out of here. Well, that doesn't apply to me. But after reading it and reading all of the information, by the way, all of the information that I received during this time was geared towards women. None of it was geared towards men. And that's okay. I'm just saying the majority of the time it's women, and the majority of the information that's being read by is women. But in this case, in this minor case, there was no material that was specific to me as a man. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but anyway, I'm going off on a long tangent, and I'm really sorry. But I was able that day and further on into the oncoming weeks to understand more about the emotional abuse that went on in my house that I didn't even know was possible or didn't even think existed. That was a long story. I'm sorry. All right. So okay, we already went through that one. Regarding specific subtypes of intimate partner violence, 8.2% of men experience contact sexual violence. 31% experienced physical violence. 14.9% experienced severe physical violence, and 2.2% experienced stalking during their lifetime. So it's when I'm reading this out loud, I'm saying to myself, this is more relevant than I ever dreamed was possible. Like for men, about 1 in 20 men, or 5.8 million in the U.S. experienced contact, sexual violence, physical violence, and/or stalking by an intimate partner during the 12 months of the preceding survey. Okay, and then this was the one I thought was really interesting, which was over 1/3 of men, 38.1 million, experienced psychological aggression by an intimate partner during their lifetime. So let's try to define what psychological aggression is. And we can do that because I have the information to provide that to you. Okay. So, lifetime prevalence of psychological aggression by an intimate partner towards women. So any psychological aggression represents 43.5 million women. Aggressive, expressive aggression, which is insulted, humiliated, made fun of others, that's 30.75 million women have been victims of that. Then there's a bullet point on coercive control. Coercive control, 36.5 million women have experienced some type of coercive control. For example, kept you from having your own money, 11.5 million women. Tried to keep you from seeing or talking to family or friends, 19.5 million women. Kept track of by demanding to know where you were and what you were doing, that was 28 million women. And made threats to physically harm, 23.5 million women. I mean, it's staggering. By the way, they rounded to the nearest thousand on this information. Now, here's the one for men. Any psychological aggression that happened is 38 million men have experienced that. Expressive aggression, insulted, humiliated, made fun of in front of others is 19 million. Any coercive control is 33 million. Kept you from having your own money was 5.8 million. Tried to keep you from seeing or talking to your friends or family, 13.5 million. Kept track by demanding to know where you were and what you were doing, 27.5 million. And made threats to physically harm, 11 million. So, this is a real universe. This is a real thing. Intimate provider violence is a thing. And, what I thought was just, normal, everyday stuff that a man had to deal with being a man, come to find out, isn't necessarily always the case. And that, I am absolutely prone to being emotionally abused, by a significant other in my lifetime, and have been. And I swear to you, I would have told you I never would have believed that could happen to me. So if you like this content and you think it's interesting and it helps you and it gives you perspective and you want to learn more, please subscribe and I'll put plenty more out there. Make a comment. That'd be great. You can check out our Etsy store. It's in the link, Linktr.ee /theinbetweenman links. And you can, what else? I'm losing my train of thought. You can follow us on YouTube. Dude, I'm sorry. I am just shot, but I appreciate all of you. Do yourself a favor. Do me a favor. Get yourself a beverage in your hand. Something like maybe like an iced tea or You know what sounds really good right now? Like a Chick-fil-A peach milkshake. That sounds really, really good. But don't have one of those if you're a diabetic, because that would be bad, and you could go into shock, and I don't want to be responsible for that. But I'm glad you're here. Stick around. Join us. I'm not going away, and I'll see you in there.